What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and y'all know I'm always trying to bring you information from sources who I feel like, listen, they tell you, have somebody smarter than you in the room in cases where you don't know everything. And that's why Rochelle Ritchie is here with me today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for having me.
And I've been telling you this for years now. We've been wanting to do something together because I do appreciate watching your point of view on things, the information that you have. It is an election year. And I know they always say, you know, we got to vote. Our life depends on it. And this year is so important. Every year is important. But we do have a lot in the balance here. So you're a political strategist. You've worked, you know, at the White House.
On the Hill.
On the Hill.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, on the Hill. See, you've worked on the Hill. You know, you've worked for Marilyn Mosby. You're a reporter. You do everything. So just let people know how you identify yourself, because I don't want to mess it up.
No, you're okay. I identify myself as a political commentator, freelance, that just likes to get the truth out to people. I did work for Marilyn Mosby. She was a prosecutor in Baltimore during the Freddie Gray case. I served as a press secretary on the Hill, for House Democrats. And, you know, I've worked as a senior media advisor for Congress members as well. And I just think that it's important that this election, like you said, it's critical. And I'll admit, Angela, I was one of those people that I was unsure. Who am I voting for? You know what I mean? I wasn't clear. And part of it was because, and I think a lot of Black people are looking at it like this too, I was looking at my money. And I was saying, under a Trump presidency, I had a few more dollars on my paycheck. But I had to look at the bigger picture and say, but at what expense does that come? That comes at the expense of my freedom of choice. That comes at the expense of possibly being able to go to the polls and even vote. Because we see what's happening down in Georgia. When people are heading to the polls and somebody gives them a bottle of water, the fact now that in Georgia you could be arrested for that is insane. And so even though I don't live in the state of Georgia right now, I still have to think about my people. And so
it's not just about your paycheck and a few extra dollars in your paycheck. It's about what are we giving up in order to have these few dollars extra.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of Black people are very concerned about right now with this. They're concerned about the economy. Everything is way too high, inflation. And they feel like they were doing better under a Trump presidency. But understand this, during COVID, there was money coming out. You were being given checks. You were being given $2,000, $600 stimulus checks. You're not getting those checks anymore. So it feels like Biden's economy is not as strong as Donald Trump's economy was. But the fact is that Biden's not giving you any money. Right? So it's easier to think that, oh, I was getting all this and that. There were PPP loans. All of this was coming out. And I was doing much better.
But
it's not
even
necessarily
with that,
true.
Right, was that Donald Trump and the Republicans that wanted to give that money?
No.
From my understanding, they weren't the ones that signed up.
No. A matter of fact, Donald Trump said that he would vote against the stimulus package during COVID. He ultimately obviously turned around and voted for it. But let's look at...
And held up those checks so he could sign his name on it.
Exactly. And you have to think that in the House, you had 100, I think it was like 131 House Democrats that voted for the stimulus. You had some 100+ Republicans that voted against it. Right?
But want to take credit when people are excited
They take credit because they had a Republican president. And so I understand, especially when it comes to Black men, that is the voting base that I think Democrats are really lacking on targeting for this election. And they're very concerned about the economy. There is too much of a message coming from the Democratic Party that is focused on, you know, fear and defeat, right? Where we need to be having a conversation where we are focused on hope and power. Because if we sit at home on our hands and we don't go out to the polls and vote, nothing changes. And I'm not here to tell anybody who to vote for.
Right.
I just want people to vote. I want people to be informed voters, not emotional ones.
And you know what's really hard about being an informed voter right now is there's so many different things coming at you, especially on social media, just snippets of things, and anybody could say anything or post something and you think it's true depending on where you're getting your news from and what you read.
Well, the problem is people don't read. People read headlines. They don't read articles. You know what I mean? They listen to podcasts. They don't go and read policy. They're not paying attention to the legislation that is being passed. And right now, you know, this election is very simple for me. I posted this on my social media. I said, this election is about a democracy and a dictatorship. And under that democracy, you have reproductive rights, you have voting rights, you have all these things.
Which have been restricted.
Right. Under a dictatorship, you have that restriction that you just mentioned. It's very simple. I think Black people are looking for a Black agenda, and there definitely needs to be one. But we as a people also need to be more clear on what exactly what it is that we want. And I don't think that we've been clear enough.
Now, what
are
some things that we should be asking for, or in your mind? Not that you speak for everybody, but for Rochelle, Ritchie, what are some things that you're saying should be on the table?
Well, I definitely think that we need to. One of the big issues is immigration, right?
Yes.
And we are constantly hearing about, Biden is failing on immigration. Well, the Republicans literally just voted against their own bill because Trump told them to do so.
Right. And is that partially also because they want to make sure that Democrats don't get credit for passing legislation
it's
when it comes to immigration? They want to make sure in some of these Democratic cities, the mayors, the governors and states are looking bad.
Yeah, it's all a political game.
Because you're from Chicago.
Yeah.
So Chicago has its own.
Yeah, and listen, my cousins in Chicago are like, they're tired of it. They are seeing these people come into their neighborhoods. They're seeing these people just sitting on buses because obviously it's freezing cold in Chicago, and they're tired of it. What I want to see is clear legislation, but I want to make sure that when it comes to immigration, the concern for Black people is that these people are going to be taking our jobs. These people are getting more money. They're taking our homes, all of that. I want to make sure, fine, if you want to have this great immigration policy, you want to open the borders to everybody, cool. But make sure that the people that built this country on their backs for free are still first in line. That is what I want to see. What happens with us is we get legislation, Angela, as Black people, right? But we don't follow up to see how has that legislation been beneficial? Has it had an impact on the changes that we need to see? So if we see anti-police brutality legislation come through, we need to be monitoring that bill to see, is it having an impact federally or locally? Because if not, we need to go back to the drawing board. We cannot be satisfied with just legislation coming through and saying, oh, it's all good.
Yeah, now we can move on to the next.
Clearly it's not. Because we're still having the same issues, and that's because we don't have follow-up.
Yeah, because even for myself as a New York City resident, I see all the issues that we're having right now with finding housing for migrants and also making sure they have food to eat and they're getting vouchers. But on the flip side of things, housing is a huge issue here in New York City, as it is, across the country.
Right.
But this is a very crowded place. But I also know we have a Black mayor, and I also know that it's not easy to figure out what do you do with everybody, because you can't just have people outside and they're busing people here. So it's not like they're just coming here on their own.
They're busing people here because the Governor Abbott, I think, in Texas is like, look, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Bring them to New York.
You've made a sanctuary city. You deal with it. And now we're sort of seeing what happens in Texas, and we're experiencing that for ourselves without the resources, really, to even handle this. I don't know why anybody would come. If I was an immigrant, don't send me to Chicago.
But
it's too cold.
You don't know what they're telling them too.
Right. They don't know where they're going.
What you're being told. They're telling you, get on this bus and we'll have a job for you.
Yeah.
And we'll have this. And so you're thinking, okay, amazing. That's what I'm here for. Like, I want to work. I want to do these things. And then it's when you get there, there's nowhere to go. What am I doing?
Right. So I think immigration is obviously a major issue for Black people. We've heard the conversations around reparations. Obviously, that's been more state focused now than federally. I think federally, I don't know if it's even possible. But I also think that we want to make sure that our right to vote is obviously protected. But
a woman's right to choose.
A woman's right to choose. All of those things, right, are what we are sort of voting for, or really voting for in this election. But one of the things that you and I talked about is there's got to be more responsibility when people get on this mic and they talk about these issues and the digital platforms that are sharing political information. It cannot just be clickbait.
Right.
We have got to be more responsible. We have got to have people. It's okay if the host doesn't know as much about whatever is going on politically, right? It's not everybody's ministry.
Right.
But you need to make sure that you have people that are coming in and they understand the power of this mic, and they're not red carpet activists okay, that are just doing this to get some clicks, to get some followers or whatever. They are doing this work every single day. And those people are out there. Maybe they don't have 1 million followers. Maybe they're not on national news and all of those platforms, but they are the grassroots people who are doing this work every single day, not just when it's popular.
So why do you think that those aren't the people who are being more highlighted when it comes to media and mainstream news?
Because they don't have the followers. That's it.
All right.
It's literally
Fair
that
enough.
simple.
We're trying to go viral.
Their digital currency is not as strong, but the work they are doing is. And I think if you have the right people in your team that can say, listen, they might only have 1,000 followers or so, but look at what they're doing in their communities.
And this is not easy work. You even had situations where you were being threatened as a reporter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I went on to Fox News, which I did quite often. I said something about Kanye West when he was on his Trump train. And a guy by the name of Cesar Sayak had threatened to drown my body in the Everglades. And I actually had reported it to what is, I guess, formerly now known as Twitter.
They didn't think it was a credible threat.
And they didn't think it was a credible threat. Well, it turns out that Cesar Sayak was the guy that was sending pipe bombs to politicians, to national networks, and everything. And then Twitter issued me an apology. This is not easy work. It's not fun. And there are people that are really putting their lives on the line every single day to do this, and they deserve to be heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what responsibility should social media have? Because we see with Facebook, things that have happened with the election, with the advertising and the things that they run. And then we see Elon Musk with X, just so many different things. And obviously Facebook also owns Instagram. What should be happening as far as any legislation to control things being factual when they're posted?
That's hard because then you get into a sense of censorship. And I think we always have to be very careful about opening Pandora's box. We want to censor people when it's something that we don't like to hear. So, but then there could be a moment where there's something that you say that actually does need to be heard. And someone's like, no, that's not, we don't want to hear that either. It's a very delicate situation. But I think that for Black people in particular, because that Black voters are my focus, I think for us in particular, the platforms where we get our news, the popular, the shade rooms, the Jasmine brands, the spiritual worlds, the Way Up with Angela Yee, those places, I think that those places have to be where we are saying, we're going to do a better job at fact checking. We're going to do a better job.
And you can even reach out. You're a media outlet.
Yeah.
You can reach out to get a firsthand comment from a spokesperson. That's what, especially when it comes to politics.
Because people are literally just looking at the image.
Yeah.
And they're reading what the image says, and that's it. They're not doing a deeper dive. You can tell them all day long, go to our website, link in on our page. Most people aren't going to click on that to read anything.
Right.
They're seeing that Sexy Red said that the hood messes with Trump because he gave us all this money. It's not saying, well, true. However, he also voted against it, and Republicans also voted against it, but it was House Democrats that were the ones that were really pushing it through. That's fine. That's not shading Sexy Red, right? But it's saying, like, let's inform her.
Let's do a deeper...
Right.
Yeah.
Let's inform her so she's prepared when she goes onto these platforms, that she is informed.
Now, let me ask you this, because we're talking about, like, your main concern is the Black vote, right? And we want to make sure that people are getting the right information and also going out to make sure they're registered to vote, voting, being informed about who they're voting for. When people show these polls now, is that something that we should pay attention to? Because I know it's still early for us to look at that, and a lot of times it doesn't correlate to what happens in reality. But when we're looking at these polls and what they're saying, is this the time to be looking at numbers?
Those polls are so... People like to use polls. I mean, I'll admit it. I do it too. I love to use the polls and the stats because it makes me sound smarter and more informed. But there's such a margin of error sometimes with them. And also, I think it was when Obama was running for president, he was trailing behind. Everyone's thinking like, oh, he's not going to win because he was trailing behind Romney and Newt Gingrich at the time, but he ended up winning.
Right.
Even though all the polls were saying like, oh, he's trailing, there's no way it's going to happen. So I take those with a grain of salt. But I do think that right now there is, I'm going to use this percentage because I think it's pretty shocking that, 20% of Black people were saying that if they voted today, they would vote for Trump.
Now, what is this obsession with Trump? You got to explain this to me because,
I don't know.
I've been watching everything that's been happening. He has his $355 million judgment now, for lying about his numbers, inflating his numbers, his fraud. And then in addition to that, everything with E.G. and Carol, which I feel like doesn't get talked about a whole lot, right? Case study. I feel like somebody with all of this shouldn't even be eligible to run for president.
Well, that's what they're trying to do. In
certain states, they are.
Especially with Fannie, the district attorney.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Fonnie. I always say Fonnie Willis, especially with her down in Georgia. I think that Trump presents such a realness to him. He's not trying to persuade. He's not trying to be anybody else than himself. And I think that there are some people that sort of appreciate that rawness that he delivers. I think they are somewhat also entertained by him. And when you look at all the court stuff that he's going through, some people kind of resonate with the system trying to bring you down and trying to keep you from,
I too did that.
You know what I mean? So I think that's what it is. But I think that for a lot, it's money. It comes down to the economy. Democrats are still running this.
And people also like the idea
we
of
shall overcome campaign, and it's not working.
Out of closing the borders. People love that idea too, and Trump brings that also, right?
Yeah.
Because they're seeing what's happening here. So for Trump, this is great that there's a lot of chaos when it comes to no legislation, when it comes to immigration, because it makes it look like he needs to come in and save the day, and he's going to be really tough on that.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the things that makes him attractive too. But I still think that we have to, what I look at is I fear his supporters being emboldened by another one of his presidencies. And I'm talking about the January 6th type of supporters. Those are the people that concern me. And I think another presidency, I think we will see more Charlottesville. I think we will see more of that.
Hate was definitely rampant, and people felt very emboldened, like you said, to be outside and saying negative things and attacking Black people and racist things. DEI is under attack as well.
Right. So we lose. I mean, think of the things that have happened. We've seen Roe v. Wade gone. Affirmative action, particularly when it comes to higher academia, gone. People think that these things can't happen. It's not just about Trump being elected into office. It's about who is he appointing to the courts, who is on his cabinet, who is going to be heading up some of these, the Department of Education, the Department of Defense, the DOJ. Who is going to be heading those things up? We cannot just think Trump, Biden. We have to look at who is his team. And also think about the fact that when you're voting for your members of Congress or your local officials, some of these people are so scared of Trump, they'll do whatever he says. Right. Congress is supposed to be the ones that holds the president accountable. And if you have just a bunch of yes people to a man who was able to use his rhetoric to drive people to go into our people died. That is scary and that is dangerous. And I'm not sure if that's worth an extra $1,000 on my paycheck.
Now, let's talk about Joe Biden, since he is running again. And how would you rate his presidency?
I mean, I'm bored. I mean, I can't rate it in a way with numbers.
As far as accomplishments, right? Because I feel like there's not enough discussion about what has been done. Everybody says he hasn't done anything. That's what the rhetoric is. But I want to be clear that that's not true.
No. It's not true. He's actually created more jobs. The unemployment numbers for Black people in particular has gone down. I think that they don't do a better job at selling what they have done. I think they are. I think they're too quiet. I think a lot of the Democrats are way too quiet when it comes to the successes of the Biden administration. Right now, Trump is eating up the airways with all of his legal issues, which is causing the networks to also focus more and more on Trump.
He's selling sneakers. He's doing sneaker con.
That was the craziest. That was crazy to me.
Right.
The sneaker con thing was crazy. But I think that the Biden administration, or at least the campaign, has hired, I don't know her name, so forgive me, but I know she's a Black woman. They've hired someone to try to start driving that messaging to black people.
They should have did that like 2 years ago.
They should have.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly,
because I do feel like there's this, he hasn't done anything. They promised this. It didn't happen. But people also, if you understand how the legal system works and how legislation gets passed, it's not just up to the president.
It's not.
Yeah, at all.
It's not.
It's not just the executive branch. There's a lot of things at play here and a lot of things getting blocked.
But when you look at it, I actually focus very much so more on what's being taken away from us than what's being given to us. That's how I look at it. So when I mention Roe v. Wade, the affirmative action, the attacks on DEI, I'm looking at what is being taken away from me by the other party.
Right.
And so that's where my focus is. You know, I for me, I feel like I'm more responsible for just my livelihood in general. But when you start taking away things that impact my livelihood, then that's when I'm like looking at that other party like, this might be a better option, because this decision, this election is going to have a generational impact. This is not going to be just 4 years of Trump and we'll be okay.
Right.
When he appoints people to the courts, and when he has people, if he has control of the Senate and the House and the executive office, who knows what's going to come?
What do you think will energize people to get up and vote and make sure that they're registered and make sure that they're informed? What are ways that can happen? Because I feel like everyone's trying to figure that out right now.
I think people have to look at very simple, like I said earlier, democracy, dictatorship. What do you get under democracy? What do you get under dictatorship? It's that simple. And if you're okay with someone who comes in and says on day one, I will be a dictator, then by all means, go vote for Trump. But if you still want to have choice in this country, if you don't want to be censored, if you want to be able to go to the polls and vote and be safe while doing it and not suffer any sort of legal repercussions because you gave somebody an umbrella because it was raining or whatever, then there you go.
All right. Well, listen, I hope that, like I told you this before, I know you live in D.C., but I'm hoping that you'll be able to come through as we're having this really huge election year. We always know it's always a critical time to make sure you're paying attention, but this year is super important. And I know they're like, everybody says that, but it definitely is a critical time as we're watching. This feels like a movie that we're living in. I'm not going to lie.
I will be sitting in front of the TV with my popcorn on election day, just waiting to see what's going to happen.
Ooh, please, Lord, don't let my heart sink. And lastly, I want to ask you, when people say that Joe Biden is too old, right, and, he's suffering and they feel like he has dementia and things like that, what are your thoughts about that?
I saw the press conference that he did where he was being asked about his age and, remembering something about, his son's death. And I just found it to be very, very sad, actually. I don't think that his age discredits him. I think that until this man goes off and gives the nuclear codes to somebody, then we all need to calm down. It's okay.
Now, there's also rumors, and so you can confirm or deny this, but I know that Michelle Obama. You've actually did a great interview with her some time ago, but they're saying that maybe she might run.
I have heard that as well, but she has always been adamant that she would not run for president of the United States. But
it's a state of emergency.
Right. I think given the circumstances, it's kind of like, listen, you got to save the country. I think if Michelle Obama ran for office, it's a slam dunk. Can you imagine
our first black woman president?
From Chicago.
And do you know how many people, from Chicago. Do you know how many people would be energized to vote? But you know what I realized from when Hillary Clinton ran also? People are so misogynistic.
But they coming out for Rochelle.
But it's just that I also do not discount that. You know what I'm saying? The fact that
I think she's the Republicans party's biggest fear is a Michelle Obama.
You need to link back up with her, Rochelle.
I wish I could. It was so long ago when I interviewed her.
And that's right. And that's why we got to remember our day ones.
At that time, she was they were campaigning. This was right before Barack won, or President Obama, let me be respectful.
That's your boy.
No,
it's from Chicago.
When President Obama ran for office the first time, I interviewed her. And that was before all that she is now. So.
Right. Well, you know what? Let's hope that something like that could happen.
But
right?
people do want to see
we
other
run on that
candidates.
Campaign, hope.
Yeah, hope.
Yeah.
People do want to see other candidates. There was I think it was the I'm not gonna quote a an outlet, but there was a poll that showed that 17% of Black voters in particular wanted to vote for somebody else other than Biden or Trump.
Who else would you like to see run?
I don't know.
Besides Michelle Obama.
Well, I mentioned to you Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay.
I think he's strong, but I don't think this is it.
Yeah, he also, I think, feels a big responsibility for
right now. Yeah,
right now for his position as a speaker.
Yeah. So right now, not him, but I would definitely say in a couple of years I could see possibly a Hakeem Jeffries.
That's my congressman.
I know.
Okay, let's go. All right. Well, Rochelle, where can people find you also?
Instagram at Rochelle Ritchie. Where am I? X at Rochelle Ritchie. Everything's at Rochelle Ritchie.
Good. We love that you have your name available for you to use. That's not an easy thing to do. But no, I really do appreciate you. Like I said, I've always watched your work and I appreciate like the voice that you've had. You know, I remember you cut your hair on television. That was a big moment.
Yeah. And this is still my natural hair. I told somebody, I was like, I'm going back to the roller wraps and I'm going back to the 90s. I'm going back to that.
No, but honestly, like, love to see your face and to hear your voice and what you have to say, because that's what we need. People who are informed, who know what's going on, and can pass that real information on to us just from your background, everything you've been doing. And, so please come back and join me regularly.
Anytime.
All right, Rochelle Ritchie, guys. Thank you.
Way up.